Absolutely. That is,
I mean, why are the imams not instructed by the federal government that you're not in Yemen anymore? Okay? And in America, we're allowed to do these things. And you better tell your congregants to calm down. Get the imams into an FBI center and teach them what's allowed in America. Guess we're not living in Yemen.
that is
Thank you. I'm going to send you a free copy of Countdown to Mecca out next week. CNN just reported that members of the mosque that the Muslim Simpson once regularly attended, the Islamic Community Center of Phoenix, are in shock about what happened. They're just in shock, according to its president, Osama Shami. Osama Shami is shocked. You see, the shooter, who's now sleeping with the fishes, was a regular worshiper at the mosque until around 2010 or 2011. And they said he offered no signal that he held radical views, according to Osama Shami. He was a gentle person, said Osama Shami. He always had a good attitude, a good demeanor. Well, because he was around his brethren. But he also said he went on a rampage because he didn't want to live in a non-Muslim nation. So instead of moving to Yemen or other denizen of freedom, he decided to shoot up a free speech event. No matter how offensive, Muhammad drawing contest is offensive to many, but it's allowed in America, which is why they were allowed to hold it. If it wasn't allowed, they wouldn't have been able to hold it. Do you understand that? But that's not the question. You're saying, yeah, it's allowed, but it shouldn't be allowed. Should it be allowed? Should Pamela Geller be arrested for this? That's what you want. That's what you really want. You want Pamela Geller, who held the event, to be arrested. You don't like freedom of speech when it violates your liberal protocols, do you? Pornography? That's fine. Harvey Weinstein's violence in every other movie? That's fine. Sean Penn's double-talking hypocrisy, anti-gun, but every movie he's either killing someone or cutting him up with an axe? That's free speech. But when a woman like Pamela Geller says, okay, let's see what they're really made of, and she holds a cartoon contest on Muhammad, and then the Muslim nuts go crazy, these two, that's her fault, not theirs. That's why we're talking about it. WABC, New York City calls. Will, go ahead. You're up on the Savage Nation. Make your point.
You know, what's happening here is a coup, okay? I don't even want to say anymore Islamic radicals or Muslim radicals. In my mind, and of millions of conversations almost, maybe embellishing a little bit, but at least thousands of conversations I've had with Muslims, you're either two types of Muslim. One, obviously a terrorist, okay? Two, a terrorist sympathizer. And that's the issue I get when I talk to another Muslim, when they talk about blowing up the infidels, when they talk about blowing up Israel. Well, I don't condone terrorism, but I can understand. And
yeah, I heard that from all the radicals about Baltimore. That's what all the white liberals are saying. Well, I don't condone burning Baltimore, but you can see the grievances that the disenfranchised youth had.
Have any problems. I mean, listen, obviously what's going on in Baltimore is crazy, but the bottom line is they were talking about, well, it's incendiary. Incendiary is what America is based on.
Do you know that the national anthem is now considered incendiary to Muslims at colleges around America? Did you know that? Did you know that the movie American Sniper was banned in Michigan because a few Muslims, a few hateful throwbacks said that the movie offended them? Do you know that?
Can I ask you a question? You know, the greatest thing that ever happened to this country when we signed the Declaration of Independence, you don't believe that was incendiary to people that were here that were saying, hey, God save the king. I'm British. And
you know, you make a good point. It was very incendiary to the British overlords, and I'm sure 30% of Americans said don't provoke the crown.
And what happens is we have things in this country called...
Ooh, don't provoke the crown. Don't mock the queen. They're liable to get mad. We're doing real good now.
Exactly, and what we do is we provoke debate, and debate is how we handle things in this nation. You're not going to Islamatize my nation and have women not be able to speak and stone gays to death. The same people that are defending these people's coup of America are the very people that they'll kill first.
You don't have anyone disagreeing with you from my side, I'll tell you that. I see it for what it is. The very liberals who defend the Islamists are the ones who will be knocked off first, is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is what makes me laugh more than anything.
No, I get it, Will. I know what you're saying. I do this for a living on a daily basis. I see the truth. But unlike God, I don't wait. See, God sees the truth but waits. I see the truth, and I don't wait. I speak. I speak, therefore I am. I write, therefore I am. I send you a copy of my novel, Countdown to Mecca, therefore you am. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Your Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com. It's the only company I trust for tangible assets, gold and silver. Call 800-BUI-COIN. See, America is a nation founded on provocation. And the day we cease to provoke is the day we cease to be Americans. Provoke, to stimulate or give rise to a reaction or emotion, typically a strong or unwelcome one. To arouse, produce, evoke, cause, elicit, induce, excite. Instigate, precipitate, trigger. That's what provocations do. But the reason we are Americans and not Chinese is that we're allowed to do that. So you have filthy, dirty, degenerate comedians like the CK guy who gets up and says the most vile things imaginable. And as a result, idiots in the audience pay to hear more of this filth, right? You have Larry Flint with filthy magazines, made a fortune. He could provoke all he wants. And so now we have it in the religious field. Now, it's been going on a long time where Hollywood's been provoking Christians for a very long time. In recent memory, I can tell you a Larry David segment where he makes a mockery of a cross, or he actually pees on it. A picture of Jesus in a bathroom. Christians didn't burn down Larry David's condominium or apartment because Christianity is a religion of peace. And the Christians have been taught that when someone offends you, you turn the other cheek. Muslims apparently haven't gone through that yet. They're still living in the 9th century. They think it's their right to shoot people up if they draw a picture of Muhammad in a cartoon. Well, they got to learn what country they're living in. They're not living in Yemen. They're not living in the 9th century. They need to live in the century they're living in the nation they're living in. And if they don't like it and they can't adapt to the laws of the land, they're welcome to go elsewhere. That's the right reaction, not to attack Pamela Geller. You can say she's a provocateur, which she is. Would I have run such an event? No. But she did. She had a right to do it. If it was not legal to do so, she wouldn't have been able to do it. And so, therefore, now ask yourself other questions about other riots in the past. How about going back to the gay movement, the Stonewall riots? Gays rioted in the West Village because they wanted to provoke the society at large, the straight society, into telling them basically that they had a right to live and do it their own way, so they rioted. Was that legal? I don't know. It happened. It happened, and it led to gay rights, didn't it? Well, now Pamela Geller is leading an anti-Sharia revolution in America, and it may lead to the betterment of our society. And it may teach our little guests here that we're not going back to the 9th century and we're not moving to Yemen socially. The country will not change like that. That's what it comes down to. And that's why we're arguing over this. KKOH in Reno. Dan, go ahead, please. You're on the Savage Nation. Make your point.
Michael, one side being in the wrong does not put the other side automatically in the right. In this story here, there were no good guys except for that cop, who I absolutely agree deserves a medal.
All right, so you're saying Pamela Geller had no right to run the event?
She had every right to do it, but having...
all right, well, we agree to that. We agree to that. She had every right to do it, but you're saying it wasn't wise.
It was beyond unwise. It was stupid. It was deliberately provocative for no other reason than for provocation's sweet sake.
So you believe that we should kowtow and cater to radical Muslims?
No.
We should all be afraid of them now, and we should suddenly stop drawing cartoons.
No, we should not. Absolutely not.
Well, wait a minute. You're saying that it provokes them into rage. What if everything the left does provokes me into rage? Do I go shoot people up? I don't do that.
No.
I counter them with my ideas on a daily basis. Maybe the Muslims could learn to counter hatred with wisdom. Maybe they could take some of their Quranic wisdom and give it to us instead of Quranic hatred.
Michael, you are a civilized man.
Well, then they ought to become civilized or get the hell out of the country.
Absolutely. I mean, we are more...
Why isn't the federal government demanding that imams come in for a training session to teach their flock that they don't live in Yemen in the 9th century? And this is the way America works. However offensive you may find it, swallow it and you have to live with it. Because you don't live in Yemen anymore. And you don't live in the 9th century. You're living in a pluralistic society that believes in these things no matter how disgusting it may be to you. You cannot use violence to control it. Use some of your Quranic wisdom to control it. Teach the world about the beauty of Islam. Teach the world some of the beauty in the Quran. Teach the world about some of the great contributions of Islam. But don't go shoot them up. Why doesn't the federal government hold such a seminar for imams and force them to attend?
That runs into making the government step in and do this and that, and that's the...
Well, when the government steps in every other way, I can guarantee Obama's going to give a speech that while we oppose violence, we find that drawing the prophet is offensive to Muslims. You know he's going to say that. You know that that's going to be the position of the Justice Department. They're going to somehow justify it, just like they justified the riots in Baltimore. You heard that, didn't you? Same thing. While we oppose violence, we understand the oppressed minorities in Baltimore and their righteous grievances. Didn't we hear that last week?
Michael, this thing about there ought to be a law, the government ought to step in, the government ought to impose this and restrict...
I didn't say that, but in this case, we need the government to step in. In the other cases, we don't. This is where government needs to step in. When you have a violent subpopulation in the country, you better get them in a room and teach them what's allowed and what's not allowed. See, that's where we need the government. We don't need them anywhere else. Or let's say we don't need them to the extent that they've penetrated every other aspect of society. They need to retrain the imams in America as to what country they're living in and what nation they're living in and what century they're living in. My opinion. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282.
Kill people. They were stopped in the parking lot by two officers armed with handguns, and immediately the Muslims opened up with the machine guns, wounding one of the cops. The other guy had the presence of mind to shoot both of them dead, shooting them in the head, despite their body armor. So now we're left with the carnage afterwards and a discussion. And there's two sides. There are those of you who think we have a right to draw Muhammad if you want and believe it as an important part of freedom of speech. And after this event, they're going to say, you see that? Freedom of speech is under threat by Muslims. That's one side. The other side, the liberals will say that it's an open, unnecessary provocation. But I want to remind you that the First Amendment was written to protect offensive speech, not to protect polite speech, and to protect offensive statements in the written form and in the purely artistic form. That's what the First Amendment was created for, not to protect Hallmark greeting cards, not to protect political speech that's saccharine. And so that's where we are. We're living in the United States of America. We're not living in a repressive country like Britain, where this is not permitted. Do you know that in 2006, the U.S. State Department reacted to the Danish cartoon controversy by saying, well, they support freedom of expression, but, quote, anti-Muslim images are as unacceptable as anti-Semitic images. But they had nothing to say about anti-Christian images. The U.S. State Department never said anything about protecting Christian images. In fact, the opposite is true. The enormous so-called political correctness in this country has led to U.S. universities banning educational materials because some students could find them upsetting. It's led to Muslims, a few radicals, banning, for example, the showing of American Sniper. It's led to universities who have banned the national anthem saying it offended Muslims because they find it militaristic. Where do you want this to end? This nation was founded by religious minorities who felt persecuted in Europe. And we have every right to express ourselves. And if you don't like it, then leave the country. It's that simple. We're not changing because you don't like it. It's that simple. So they published caricatures. And they knew it would provoke. I mean, there was no question about it. She knew it would provoke. But let me play a soundbite for you now and ask you if this should be banned as well. Listen to clip number 11.
We need the Justice Department to step in and take over policing in this country. In the 20th century, they had to fight states' rights and to get the right to vote. We got to fight states' rights in terms of closing down police cases. Police must be held accountable.
All right, so here's a provocateur, one of the worst people in the history of the American political scene, a known rabble-rouser, a known provocateur. He was outside Freddy's Fashion Mart in New York City with a bullhorn egging on people who burned the building to the ground in which people died. Al Sharpton was known to have invented the Tawana Brawley rape case. He's a provocateur, isn't he? Now he's saying police need to be taken over by the federal government. I find it remarkably unconstitutional and offensive, but I'm not a violent man. I'll counter it with reason. I'll counter it with opinion. I'll counter it with speech. That's what we do in America. We don't live in Al Sharpton's world of violence and